Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So we just wanted to share with you guys some information that we've gotten about who really was Yeshua, Jesus, and what was his mission, as we've touched on this in the past. And just to preface this whole video for those of you that may be tuning in for the first time, and say, even, who are you two anyway?
Yeah. Who are we? We're not sure sometimes.
Right? Well, yeah, and in reality, that's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are much more than we think we are, and most people have no clue as to the nature of reality in general and the multi-dimensional aspects of our consciousness. But basically, we're both people that have had unusual, in some sense, historical upbringing. We've been through a lot in different ways. Cindy is somebody that grew up, well, she sees dead people. She always has. It's just part of who she is in her makeup. I feel that she is absolutely one of the most gifted as far as like psychic, intuitive, clairvoyant ability to communicate with beings in all different densities, to channel. She could get information going into trance, although that most definitely is extremely taxing to the body. And historically, people that do that, they tend to not live really long lives because it is so taxing on us. And even just the energy work can be taxing on us. But Cindy, she has just amazing abilities, both as an intuitive and also as a healer. She does biofield tuning. She uses tuning forks. She has what seems to be hundreds of them. They're always everywhere. It's like, okay, it's time to clean up the bed. It's going to take 15 minutes just to get the tuning forks off.
I have a few, yeah. Well, I want to make sure that everybody, I have one for each organ pretty much, because we have to recalibrate people. People go through traumas and that kind of screws up our energy body. So you want to have the ability to recalibrate things on an individual basis and things on a larger basis.
And, these gifts do go through generations, as her, two of her daughters are pretty gifted in their own rights. And the same thing, can see, sense beings from other realities all the time, just all the time. So, that's something that is part of our past life, also perhaps part of our DNA. And again, our DNA extends beyond this lifetime. DNA itself is also multi-dimensional. Everything is always affecting everything else around it. As for myself, I too have had encounters. We both have had countless encounters with what people will call angels, demons, extraterrestrials, and interdimensionals. So we've seen them all. We've felt the vibrations of them all. Not every single type possible, obviously, but different types. As a kid, one of my first encounters was shortly after my brother passed on. Right when my brother passed on, I remember having this out of body experience. I was 5 years old. I had recently turned 5. I came home from the funeral and all, and I was just staring at the wall and in the kitchen. Next thing I know, I'm out of my body, looking at me, staring at the wall. And then it hit me, whoa, I'm not the body. I am in the body most of the time, but I'm not the body. And then that stuck with me my entire life. And as well as seeing spirits, I was a strange kid at 5 years old. I was going into closets and meditating. And as soon as I could, I was 5 years old also, handing the neighbor's kid who was 8 years old the Bible and a Catholic missal, because that's the only thing we had in the house that was spiritual. And I had to know more. I had insatiable knowledge for everything that was hidden. Everything spiritual, everything religious, everything paranormal, everything hidden, an insatiable just desire to know. And since Cindy did my Vedic chart, we understand why. It's because it's the placement of my planets, and that's also because that's my purpose in this life. That's why I jumped in here in the first place.
Well, yeah, you have those two planets in the fifth house. You have your Rahu with Jupiter, and they also both aspect the eighth house, which is the house of the occult. So you put those two in the eighth house, or their energy anyway, and you expand on all of that. So you have a lot of reasons to be the way you are.
Yeah, and that's why all I've done my entire life was just basically a quest for knowledge, but an experiential quest. That's why I've, gone to every religious tradition I could think of. I've been, in Hindu temples, Jewish temples. I've been to, Buddhist temples. I've gone through every denomination just about I could think of. I didn't cover every 30,000 in Christianity. I've gone to Wiccan circles, taken part in different occult, quote unquote, rituals, done high magic, low magic, you name it, all sorts of meditation, Qigong for over 30, 35 years. Um, Studied pranic healing. I'm a Reiki master teacher. Yeah, I pursued all avenues I could in this insatiable quest for knowledge, but also experiential knowledge. And one of the first times I felt the life force in action was actually in a very charismatic Pentecostal church, and everybody was getting slain in the spirit, where you get touched on the forehead and people were flying back. And I didn't even have to get touched on the forehead. I could just feel the tingling, the vibration of all that life force around. But I've also felt it in Hindu kirtans. So I know it's not anything that is for one denomination, one dogma. It's universal. So just to give you a little background on us, and then same thing with my kids. They've had contacts with spirits and extraterrestrials growing up all their lives too. And also, my dad had shared with me that he was born a Catholic altar boy, but he knew that aliens existed. He knew, he had encounters, and it runs down my mother's side too. So all these things, this is our background and why we are the way we are. Now, Cindy has gone more through that intuitive side of things, where I was studying the book, so to speak, and then got to a certain point where it feels like there's almost no more studying that needs to be done, because it's obvious the way the universe works. And really, as you go and study, you start to see all the lies and the twisting and the distortions and the cover-ups that are going on. One of the biggest cover-ups is about Yeshua and his whole purpose and his whole life and his whole afterlife. And, what's going to happen next? Is he going to step on Mount Hermon as a giant in his second coming, so to speak? What really is going on? What was his relationship to Mary? What was he here to teach in the first place? And then how did everything get so twisted, so distorted? As you see here, a depiction of Yeshua and Mary and an angel behind them. And I said to Cindy, this is actually kind of cool and kind of really how we see the angels at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that one specific one that we see at night. Johnny does come up behind us like that. He's quite large. That's, I see him a lot like that. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to see these entities and know that they are working on your life, in your life, but they're not controlling your life.
Exactly. So while we do know Yeshua existed and still does, we don't believe the official version. That version is the version that's given to us by the powers that be that rule this planet. And if we look to the Bible for answers as to who rules this planet, well, it's Satan, it's the adversary, which in our just plain and simple view is basically, well, that group that starts with an I and ends with an I, slash, basically these reptilian beings, these reptilian hybrid beings. And we could get into Anunnaki and Ijiji And then we could go to the Draco, more of a interdimensional being that is over these other groups, as the humans here on the planet report to these other beings, like the Anunnaki, Gigi, who are basically controlled by the Draco from fourth density mostly, but some of lower fifth density. And then who are the Draco under? Well, they're under these forces that we would, well, if we look at Gnosticism, we'd have to call them archons, archonic forces, which are kind of like anti-archangels, so to speak. And then who are they under? Well, they're under this dark black AI dragon type of entity that we can, we could see references to as well in the Bible. So, the thing is that there's truth in there. There's truth in Hindu scriptures. There's truth in Buddhist scriptures. There's truth in indigenous traditions all around the world. A lot of truth in Taoism and Taoist philosophy. Confucian. We could just throw all these different, philosophies and religions out there. There's universal truths there. But again, we should not let dogma divide, and we should understand, how did the official versions come to be? Like looking at things like the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, commissioned by the Roman Emperor, who was pagan, and then said he saw a vision of the cross up in the sky and Christ telling him to conquer in this sign. And so he converted. And so because Christianity was spreading all throughout his empire, he was losing control, losing his grip. The Vandals, the Goths, the barbarians were at the gates of Rome itself. Rome was losing battles, and Rome was losing ability to control people. The best way to control people is not just through the physicality and the monetary system, it's through telling them what's going to happen after they die, threatening them with hellfire and damnation unless you follow what we tell you. And that's how they control, and did control, and still do control. That's also how they divide, as they've created other official versions of different religions and philosophical backgrounds in order to do just that. So what we have gotten is that the mission of the one known as Yeshua, Jesus, and again, nobody called him Jesus as far as his followers, because that was later. That's the Romanized Latin version of his name, taken from the Greek Jesus. But in Hebrew, they would have called him Yeshua. So even that, just think about that. How many people call on the name of Jesus when Jesus wasn't called Jesus? Just think about that for a second.
I know, that's just one simple thing that we could pause on and, chew on and wonder about, to help us understand that there's things given to us that aren't totally true. And why are they given to us in that manner? Why?
So there are several beings that we have regular communication with, namely two people, basically, that we have known in past lives, other aspects of our lives, we should say, other aspects of our consciousness, to be even more correct, that are part of the Galactic Federation, Pleiadian High Council. And so we knew them before we took these bodies. And so that's why we have such a good connection with them. We are also basically connected to what is called the Devas, certain Devas in particular, perhaps a little bit more than perhaps other ones, although they're all really benevolent beings, so to speak. Now, the Devas are beings such as Ganesha, that you might have heard of, Lakshmi, Parvati, Sarasvati, Radhe, Sita, Rama, Krishna, Shiva, just to name a few, Narayana, Vishnu. So these are higher density beings again as well. And they're very benevolent. And we do have connections with them. And when we're in the golden age, it's pretty easy to connect to them. In the Kali Yuga, very difficult. It takes a lot more work. But as we're rolling up backwards, it's interesting how these ages go. They ascend and descend. They descend and ascend. Thankfully, we're back on the ascension path. And so we wanted to share more about this. Like, it's traditionally thought that Jesus, well, many would just assume he was celibate. And just if you're brought up Catholic, you're thinking, well, Immaculate Conception. He didn't have any brothers and sisters. But no, it even says he did have brothers and sisters. And yeah, there might be an Immaculate Conception, so to speak, because we can understand that now. When we look at like abduction phenomena, how many times are there things going on with the reproductive material? How many times are people reporting, different tests being done on them, different fluids and things being gathered? And of course, we could see now, artificial insemination, clones, everything. It's all just science. It's not anything mystical. And again, so much that's quote unquote mystical and occult. It's just science that isn't known by the masses yet.
And they do that to us quite a lot. They have us think that things are just these miraculous miracles and there's no way that it could happen to us, but it does happen to only these special other people. But that's not how things work. They just simply don't teach us what's going on in all honesty.
And so, on that end, you could start to understand perhaps this was a grand endeavor of sorts to bring us very, very special being to the planet. But yet again, Source, Prime Creator, God with the big G, is within all of his creation. And again, we can't just say his or hers, because Source is both and above that. And we are too, in that we've had other incarnations, and most of us have had incarnations as both male and female. And so I thought this was pretty cool. You see here this dark reptilian entity, as Cindy pointed out to me. Oh, he's holding the base chakra, where you have the vibrations of a more benevolent being. If it was blue-skinned, I would say that feels pretty Arcturian. Holding the crown chakra. And there are the humans looking at each other, male and female, in between. In the center, you could also kind of make out a cross. And where's that cross? It's at the heart chakra.
Absolutely. To me, it just represents how we were made to be in a survival mode, but different beings are coming down to help us ascend and work through the heart chakra. And that's why we have the two, one holding the bottom and one helping us up toward the top.
So in the natural order of things, spirit, the soul, the eternal part of us, the eternal consciousness, descends, coming down to experience a heavier, denser reality, because there's so much to be learned down here, so much to actually be enjoyed. Fettuccine Alfredo.
Oh, yum. With shrimp. Lots of shrimp. Extra shrimp.
All sorts of things like ice cream and all these goodies that we could make in this density. This is a temporary place for us. In the normal scheme of things, we're temporarily here. It's basically like going to a theme park, going to an amusement park, going up to Sandusky to go on the roller coasters, so to speak. And then you come back to reality at some point in time. And yes, this might take hundreds, thousands of incarnations, millions of incarnations on this round trip. But what's happened is some entities that don't always play nice have kind of done things to keep people in this loop where they can't get back home to the higher densities or aspects of themselves. We talked about shattered soul recently. Aspects of the self become trapped in the lower densities and are unable to reconnect in a wholeness up on the higher densities. And one other thing I wanted to get back to that we had talked about before was that Yeshua and Mary were most definitely a couple. And I know there's others that have said this too, going in remote viewing, getting into a meditative state, there have been many others that have said that, yes, they also deciphered that Yeshua and Mary are most definitely a couple. Many people are now starting to be familiar with the Galactic Federation and the Pleiadians. And, the Pleiadians, again, ultimately, humans in the form that we see them, it's a humanoid being is a relatively common type of being found all throughout, our galaxy, for instance. It's just, one of those forms of life that seems to work, that seems to suit spirit. Now, we have gotten that the Pleiadians, well, the home area is the Lyran system. And there were great wars that went on between humanoid beings and these reptilian beings a long time ago. And it caused humanoid beings to scatter to different areas. And so when we see these Nordic-like beings, the Pleiadian beings, mostly fifth density, the ones that we know, well, we do know because we've actually seen with our visible eyes a ship with Laurel in it, who is our primary contact. After coming out of meditation, and when we were in New Mexico, I looked up into this sky. I was just drawn to a cloud, and then all of a sudden, basically a silver disc came out from the cloud and sped off. And I told Cindy, and she said, yeah, that was Laurel. She just wanted to let you know we're right here for you. And they are. They are. They most definitely are, because they're family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really important to understand they're not here to live your life for you. They're not going to do that. To let themselves be known would be to kind of screw up your life path and what you came down here to do and your mission. So, but they do guide and they do help and they do assist where they can. We don't know all the rules on the other side of the veil, so we can't say always what can and can't happen. But the most important thing is to allow us to live our life and live our journey and learn what we need to learn for our soul growth.
Well, they understand the way that the multiverse is set up and the way it's supposed to be. Now, the dark side, they interfered often directly. Mm-hmm. As we've said before, there are, as Cindy was alluding to, galactic treaties, galactic laws that have to be observed. Otherwise, there can be direct intervention from the good guys. So the bad guys know this, basically. And it's not even so simple as white hat, black hat. Ultimately, even the darkest of the dark ones at some point will have to learn enough to return to source at some point. And, that could be eons. We don't know. But again, ultimately, everything is source experiencing its own creation. That's your bottom line. So the Pleiadians are very close cousins in all this. And then the Arcturians, very benevolent geneticists, as far as these guys are amazing with their intelligence and knowledge of how to manipulate DNA, how to correct things, and ascension. They are most definitely ascension keepers as far as the knowledge.
Very, very important. And that was one thing that was really curious that I got when we were meditating a couple of days ago with Yeshua came into my mind. And it's like, well, how did he come to be? What was going on there exactly? And they were showing me how he was, it wasn't that his mom was a virgin. It's just his mom was implanted and with Arcturian Pleiadian beings so that he could come here. And he has a very special body that could come here on this planet and in one lifetime be able to ascend. He came here to teach ascension, but he had to be able to be that being that could actually ascend.
Yeah, so basically, as many of us are actually Pleiadian and Arcturian hybrids ourselves, with many other different strains of beings within us, different lineages within us. He was a very special hybrid, Pleiadian and Arcturian hybrid human, and was able to ascend. Now, we got that he ascended without dying. So very, very different story than what you see traditionally, because what you see is death and then resurrection. And what we got was, no, this was about how to ascend without dying. This is taking this whole aspect of yourself and bringing it up to the higher realm without going through that process. So very, very different. But as we've talked about in the Buddhist practice, there have been tens of thousands of cases of Buddhist monks achieving the rainbow body and ascending. Some entirely, just nothing left. Others, there's these small little bodies that might weigh just a few pounds, might be 12 to 16 inches long. Others, just hair and nails are there and everything else is gone. I had a recently the most intense energetic experience I could remember. Really blew my mind, and that was actually being up on fifth density is what I found out. But it was to such a degree that it felt like the 3D body. It wouldn't take much for it to not be there at all anymore, with like no trace of it left, and the entire consciousness up in 5D. We can do this. This is a possibility. It's not easy. It's one of the things that we want to get across is we should all be striving for this. But in most cases, it takes many, many lifetimes of work. But then again, many of you have done many lifetimes of work on this already.
Right. And now it feels a lot like a lot of us have been sabotaged when it comes to our diet, when it comes to medical, putting things in our way that hinder our ability to get where we need to be.
Yeah. And Cindy was sharing the shrimp thing. So we've gotten that basically the most ideal diet is definitely plant-based. And a diet that is basically getting lighter and lighter. We're going to be in very, very difficult times for many people as far as resources. This is obvious. You see what's coming. Keep working on shedding that which you don't need anymore. It's that which does not serve. And so for many people, that's going to be intermittent fasting, juicing, eating live foods. Now, you will feel changes in your body. You might have strange cravings. You might need more protein. You might need less protein. Everybody's unique, and it's going to be changing as we go along with this process. And it has been the case for many people already for years. Listen to your body, listen to your intuition, most definitely. But what we've gotten is like when you are eating the heavy, dense meats, that's going to slow the ascension process to a crawl. It's not that there'll be absolutely no chance of ascending, but it makes it much tougher. Just like if you went ahead and went along with this program that's out there, and you guys know what I'm talking about here. Just look anywhere. We equated that to basically trying to swim on a lake and then throwing, a chain around your neck. Maybe it's a 2-pound chain. Not too bad. Going to give you some cramps, perhaps. You might still be able to make it across the lake. But if 6 months come again and you're throwing another chain on, and all of a sudden you're carrying 10 pounds, then you're carrying 20 pounds, it's going to be almost impossible to cross that lake. So why do that in the first place? And recognize again who's in control of this world, who's giving us the official narrative. So I just wanted to share those things with you. But yes, the Arcturians are amazing beings. And these beings, from what we get, they feel more sixth density, whereas the Galactic Federation feels more fifth density for the most part. There are many different types of beings in the Galactic Federation, but say the Pleiadians, like Laurel, primarily are on that fifth density. The Devas that we're referring to are more on the sixth density. The Arcturians are more of the sixth density as well. The Devas can go higher as well. But also these beings do have the ability, as we shared with Laurel, coming all the way down to 3D. Of course, we're in a more of a very high 3D, low 4D right now, as we're going to be going through that astral plane on our ascension process. So when you see things, there's so many other layers to things as well. There's so many other parts to the story as well, the symbolism. as you see here, Mary with baby Jesus, interesting in this picture too, has that golden colored hair. And again, the Pleiadians primarily come across looking very Nordic. That's just what they look like. But there's so much more to this, as we could look to Yeshua and Mary, in many ways equating all the way over to Shiva and Shakti, to the divine feminine and the divine masculine, as Mary was also a huge part of this journey, and she wasn't recognized as that, unfortunately, as she was, relegated to just, brief mentions here and there. She had a much bigger story in all this, and we're talking about Mary Magdalene, and then also the archetype of the mother, the divine mother. And those of a pagan tradition, mother, maiden, and crone, might look at it at different stages in our life, different stages in our development. As we recognize, the story of Isis and Horus and Osiris is very, very ancient. Goes back, thousands of years BC. And we see basically the icons here of Horus and Isis and Yeshua and Mother Mary. And there's stories galore. We could see Lakshmi along with Vishnu, or Shiva and Shakti. And really, the allegories are all talking about us balancing our energies. And this world is very, very patriarchal. It has been patriarchal. We had that movement in the 60s, and we had the civil rights movement, we had the flower power, and we had also pushing for women's rights. And still, we don't have equality on the planet, when really all of us, we're all consciousness. The vehicles are vehicles, and ultimately, we're all one consciousness experiencing itself in such a multitude of different ways.
Well, you look at how things are ran on the planet, and there's no intuition that's used. There's no compassion. There's no mercy. There's only policy. And if you have a problem, you run into an issue with a company, or, you have problems with your bills, there's only policies to go by. So that's how they've ripped out the divine feminine out of everything, where there used to be compassion and understanding and things of that nature. That's all gone. Everything is cookie cut. All bills are written out. There's no excuses. This is the way things must go, and that's how they keep the divine feminine out. And it kind of dominoes down through people too, because you're given a really hard time in a certain company, so things sort of kind of roll downhill, if you know what I mean. It gets other humans on other humans and tattling on them and so on. So that's how they've managed to deal with that.
And I love this photo, this picture. You see the roots down there depicting, grounding ourselves. We have to be grounded into the mother, into the manifest, because, that's part of this existence, is the manifest universe. And that even goes beyond 3D. We're talking about the manifest universe, as opposed to consciousness, where there is nothing to manifest, just pure consciousness up above in the upper ether, so to speak. Here you see off to the left, you see, the trident, which with the snakes wrapped around it reminds me of the staff of Hermes Mercury. With the Ida, the Pingala, it's referencing Kundalini as well. If you think about it, there's 3 chakras above, the crown, the brow, and the throat, 3 chakras below, the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus. Where's the bridge? The bridge is in the heart center. And when Yeshua is talking about the way, the truth, and the life, he's talking all about heart-centered living, the bridge to the upper densities. The bridge to going, like, if we look at each one of these chakras as representing a different density. And when you see Moses at the burning bush, and he asks, "Who sent me?" I am. I am is the solar plexus chakra. That's concerned with this life, the ego, the 3D self, I am, the solar plexus chakra. And Yeshua is all about the heart chakra. And the heart chakra is the bridge from the lower to the upper. So that's how, the only way we could basically get up to where source is through the heart chakra. You have to open up to compassion. That's why the reference to put down your sword. And that's why also the reference is to, if somebody, wants your cloak, give them your tunic too. Somebody slaps you on the cheek, turn the other cheek. Instead of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It's all about compassion, understanding. And yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that, that we have to be completely wishy-washy, that we don't speak up, that we don't point out what's going on. We do. But we also have to rise above it all if we want to ascend.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We need to work on ourselves, work on our shadow selves, put things to bed, remove what no longer serves us. Easier said than done, but ultimately what we all need to be doing is just working on ourselves, trying to get ourselves better, trying to get ourselves up to par with where we should be. And believe me, it's very difficult because of all the challenges we have living in this world.
Yeah, and it's been a little bit disconcerting, and with some people that I've viewed as extremely spiritual and felt like they really had their feet grounded well, and they are high vibe people, but they've made the choice. And again, I'm referencing that big choice that's out there for everybody on this planet right now. And they've made the choice, in my view, to be of the world. And to me, it's just like when Satan's taken Yeshua, Jesus, up to the mountaintop and says, all this can be yours. Just submit to me. Go ahead and just do this one little thing. It won't hurt too much. But, he didn't. And we wouldn't. But unfortunately, I feel like, some are valuing the short-sightedness, the short-sighted. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like they're valuing certain aspects of their life over the bigger picture. And it's going to be easier to do this one little thing. Then I could still do all these things I always did. It's not going to interfere with this life, but it might interfere with the biggest picture, which is the ascension path and raising up in the densities. And so for me, there's no way, no way I would ever, because I value the spiritual over the physical, and that's just me. And I understand the bliss that we could get, that amazing feeling that transcends anything that we're going to get on this 3D. Yes, even Ben and Jerry's Cherry Garcia.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, even shrimp scampi or lobster fra diablo, anything like that. It transcends anything because it's a taste of that love, that unity consciousness that lies really up in those higher densities. So again, this is all about ascension. As you see the Kundalini wrapped and most people dormant. Many more people waking up now. Balancing the Ida, the Pingala, balancing the sun and the moon. Soul, Man, Solomon, Shushumna, that's the nadi going up the central channel, which leads to you getting your wings. Wouldn't you want to get your wings? As humans, in some ways, are angels that have fallen through the densities. There's different ways to look. Yes, there are angelic beings, and there are also messengers of the Anunnaki and the Ijiji. See, there's again where we have all of the above, as we've been alluding to. Yeah, there's demons. Yeah, there's angels. There's also extraterrestrials, interdimensionals. There's Pleiadians. There's Arcturians, tall grays, short grays, hybrids, Andromedans. It goes on and on and on. There's all of the above. But ultimately, our freedom lies in this. This is how consciousness rises up. It's not about bodies being pulled out of the ground and transmuted at a judgment day. As everything has gotten so twisted and distorted, recognize who gives you the big versions. If, again, something is basically held held as being a truth by the powers of this world, then in that case, I wouldn't trust it. You know, if it's that which is considered to be right by, again, the majority, you know, you got to question it, and you have to build your own discernment. So thanks, guys, for being part of the family. I look forward to your questions, your thoughts on all this. Thanks for sharing your own experiences. Make sure you're subscribed with the bell clicked on both of them, EEARTS and Evolutionary. And if you need to reach us for an appointment, it's evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail or EEARTS@protonmail.com. And then evolutionaryenergyarts.com is the website, which we will be updating hopefully within a week or two. As always, keep your hearts high. God bless, and namaste.
Namaste.